I'm meeting with Chris Miles of Money Ripples today, and I'll let him explain what that is. But before we go any farther, why don't you just give them your name and contact information for those that may want to call you or get in contact with you after this interview.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so my name is Chris Miles. Hi, I'm a Virgo. I do like long walks.
Hey, so
to the
am I.
beach. Oh, that's amazing. That's why we're here.
I guess.
So yeah, my contact information, you can email me, chris@moneyripples.com. You can also check out my website, www.moneyripples.com.
So what is Money Ripples? I mean, you're going to find out here, those of you that are watching, in just a moment, but you're probably curious, as was I.
Well, Money Ripples is basically the company I created about 2 years ago. I've been actually in the financial business for about 13 years.
Okay.
But in the last 8 years, I've really been focusing more on teaching the exact opposite of what everybody else teaches, because that's actually what works. And so Money Ripples actually was launched because I want to create a ripple effect through people's lives, starting with your personal life first, then expanding out to your kids and your immediate family members, rippling out to your communities, your countries, and even across the world.
Okay.
And I know it starts with us. It starts with us as individuals, and be able to start right there creating financial freedom and real prosperity right now.
So you can imagine why I'm having Chris come speak to us today on the subject of divorce and money. And I think you're really going to like what he has to say, because as you pointed out yourself, you do a lot of things differently than other people, but you have your reasons for it. You're not simply
Absolutely.
saying my spiel is just tip everything on its head, but you've got your reasons. And whether you agree with Chris or not, or whether everything that he suggests is going to work for you, he'd be the first to tell you this is a list of possibilities. Pick the one that, or the combination of those things that work best for you. But I think you're going to find it very inspiring and very encouraging, and where a lot of you have never seen light at the end of the tunnel, this may be the first time you do. So take it away. Tell us where you'd like to begin.
Well, let me begin by saying this. For those of you that actually are newly single, I feel for you for sure. For me, I'm actually been happily married for about 12 years, but I was actually previously divorced. Not a lot of people know this. And for us, I was we were a young married couple. We didn't have any kids, but it was a real shocker where I was just getting out of college, going through a divorce, and then figuring out how to deal with the finances myself. And that was a real scary place to be, because money I thought was there really wasn't there. I thought I was making enough money, but I really wasn't. I had to get things under control again, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, first of all, because that you can relate, and
Yeah.
that's important. So here you find yourself. I assume it was something of a surprise.
Oh, well, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody gets married to get divorced, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody ever intends to be it that way, and so yeah, it was one of those things. It was already a huge upheaval.
Right.
I remember I was shutting down in almost every area. The only
Yeah.
thing I could keep doing was dancing.
Yeah, and besides, anyone that prepares for divorce, you have to kind of wonder just how committed they are to a marriage in the first place. So this was something you probably deliberately did not prepare for. I'm a divorce lawyer. I have not made any preparations for a divorce. I don't want to be, and I don't want to encourage myself to think about it.
Sure.
So,
No, I don't think everybody does. And
Yeah.
so it was a really interesting place to be, and that's actually what got me down the path of money. I realized that as I was dating my current wife, as we're getting engaged, I knew that I had to do something more than just work 9 to 5. I always wanted something more. I wanted to be a business consultant originally, ironically enough, and I figured if I was going to be a business consultant, I should probably have a business, to have some real life experience, not just teaching from a book, right?
Okay.
And so I did, and the first business that I came across that really felt like a good fit, it really called to me, was a financial advisor. And so I started doing that and actually liked it, dropped out of school completely, didn't finish up or anything like that, went down that path for 4 years.
Okay.
And then after 4 years, I thought, okay, I learned some good stuff, but if I look at the evidence, it's not working. It's not really helping people a whole lot.
so that 4 years it gave you the grounding in
Right.
finance.
Right.
And finances and financial issues. Yeah.
It got me to see what those guys are teaching out there,
Uh-huh.
all the financial pundits and why they teach the way they do, and to see through all that bull and be able to see what really helps people.
Okay. Now, why shouldn't we think that yours is just another kind of bull?
Not because in 2006, right after I quit, so 2006, March 2006, I quit being a financial advisor. I said,
Okay.
I'm done. I can no longer do it anymore and stay in integrity. Because I realized that I had some friends that were millionaires that taught the exact opposite. And they would
Okay.
do money, they would deal with money very differently than everybody else. And I thought, well, if I look at that evidence, versus, you're an attorney, you know evidence,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Look at that versus what I've seen from financial planners and other people that have been following their advice for decades. I'd much rather be over here. And I remember actually when I left, a few years later, I went out to lunch with one of the guys from my old company. And he said, Chris, tell me, what's the difference between what you teach and what I teach? And I said, well, let me ask you this. In the last 35 years, you've been being a financial advisor since the late 70s. Where have you made the most money? In your business, making commissions off these products, or from the actual investments you've been recommending people for the last 35 years?
By following your own advice.
By following your own advice, right? And obviously he'd been following his own advice. He'd been saving and
Right.
stuff. And he said, I said, where have you made the most money? And without a hesitation, he said,
Off my commissions.
off my commissions, right? Off my business. And I said, that's the difference between you and me. You're telling people to invest in things that haven't worked for you. I'm telling people to put money in things that have. Namely, like even with like your business or being put in places that actually will help develop them, help them grow their income, things
Okay.
like that. That's where I've been telling people to put their money. The difference between you and me is I'm the only one in integrity here.
So are you telling someone who's going through a divorce or just got divorced they should start their own business, no matter who
Not
they
necessarily.
are? Okay.
No. When you're in a highly emotional state, it may not be the best time to start anything, right? Sometimes you just need to work on yourself and get yourself centered and grounded first.
Okay.
But sometimes it's the very thing that gives people that kick in the pants to go do something like that. They might still work a job, but they might say, I'm going to have to figure out how to provide for my kids. I've got 5 kids of my own.
Mm-hmm.
If my wife were to pass away or something to happen to her, I know that would be a real difficult situation trying to take care of 5 kids between 2 and 10 years of age and figure out how to take care of them and manage what I do.
And do it all by yourself.
Yeah, and so no, I mean, I don't think that's the case. They have to do that, but you definitely have to go outside of the norm,
All
and
right.
and it definitely requires, first and foremost, one, getting a good solid financial ground of where you're at, and then 2, if you want to go that route, either one, you can start your own business, you can do things like real estate or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of different options for people that help allow you to be able to create more financial freedom right now.
So how do we get that kind of grounding, and what do we do? We just briefly before we turned on the camera, we talked a little bit about you've got to, sometimes desperate situations require desperate measures.
Sure.
So what are some things, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is I've attended one of Chris's seminars, and it was interesting as to some of the ideas you have for people that are cash poor but need to keep the lights on and need to keep their house or their rent or their car payment made. Can we talk a little bit about that at this point?
You
When
bet.
you're taking stock of your financial situation, your source of income, if it was your spouse, is now out of the picture. Or if you're the one that's paying everything out, it used to be that you just took care of your family, now you're paying alimony, now you're paying child support, you may be paying your spouse's debts. What do you do at this point?
Yeah, one thing. Let me start out by saying this is that, I don't come from a place of big judgment. You get a lot of people that are financial people that tell you what you're doing wrong all the time, right? They're pointing the finger at you. They say save more money, even though you saved exactly what they recommended 10 years ago, but now they say it's not enough, right? Things like that. I've been in places where I've had situations where like I retired when I was 28, right? Was able to retire that same year I quit being a financial planner by doing the opposite. But I've also been in a position where I've been like upside down $1 million, right? And in the hole, and where I was in the hole $16,000 a month, meaning that my income was like $5,000 or $6,000 a month, but my expenses were like $22,000 a month. And so I know what it's like to be in a real tight spot, and that and judgment definitely doesn't do any good.
And you're living proof that you were able to dig your way out,
Exactly.
and it was lots of fun.
It was lots of fun.
Yeah, no, it was not fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
yeah, it was
difficult. It's
very
not.
difficult.
This isn't a bag of tricks you're going to share with us, and this isn't a magic formula.
Right.
But there is hope, and there's a way to do it, and there's a process.
That's the blessings of hardships, right? Sometimes you learn the best things during the hardest times.
Okay.
I can guarantee even right now, the things you're learning from divorce and everything else and being single again and raising a family is a difficult thing to go through. And so to do that, first and foremost, one, you got to start tracking your money. You
Okay.
got to know what's coming in and what's going out each and every month.
What if I just don't? Chris, tracking money just isn't my thing. I'm more of a creative person, or I just don't care a lot about money. So
Well, awesome. So was I.
okay.
And I'm still a creative person, but I do like to track money. But my thing is that, although I track money, I like to be ambitiously lazy.
Okay.
So I like to work hard so I can play hard.
All
Work
right.
fast so I can get done fast, right? I do the same thing with money too. Money, you do not have to become a financial expert. You don't even have to become a numbers whiz or anything like that.
Do I have to spend a lot of time going over all of my receipts?
If
And
you
all
do
that sort of
5
thing?
minutes a week, that's all it takes.
Okay.
I would hope to have rock hard abs in 5 minutes a week. Wouldn't that be amazing?
nice.
That would be the best program in the world. It'd be better than the little shake weight. You know?
So, okay, for people that are, they're in an emotionally fragile state, what would be your best advice generally? Everyone's going to be a little different. But
Yeah.
how can somebody get a handle on his or her finances without it consuming all their time or just leaving them more discouraged than when they started?
Yeah, tracking your money, like using tools like Mint.com.
Mhm.
Mint's like the flavor mint, right?
Oh, here he goes with a bunch of products we have to buy.
It's
right?
free.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mint's
it's free.
free.
It's free.
Mint.com is a wonderful thing. Lots of people will say that, not just Chris, not just me.
Yeah.
It's free, it's easy to use.
Well, yeah, everything downloads into one place, so you don't have to go log into 5 different accounts to figure out
Mhm.
what's going on. You have it all in one place, see what's happening in real time, and when transactions are coming in. So if you go and gas up your car, it's highly likely, even if you haven't taught it, it might even guess it right, saying that's a gasoline expense. If it didn't get it right, you teach it, say that's gasoline. When you do that, from that point forward, it says that's gasoline. And so every time you gas up a Chevron or something like that, it's going to say gasoline, right? You go to shop at Walmart, it might say shopping or groceries, depending on how you do it. All this stuff is done for you, so you don't have to pull out a calculator. You don't have to keep that check register. Remember, they used to teach us how to write in the back for checkbooks.
Right. And truth be
balance
told,
it.
I never balanced a checkbook. I have never balanced a checkbook in my life. My wife has balanced my checkbook, but I have never done it. And so I want you to know that I understand we all have our quirks. We all have things we'll avoid.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've never been in a position where I really, really had to take a hard look at my check register, but shame on me. Mint, however, Mint.com will really take a lot of the drudgery out of it.
It does.
But you still have to put in the numbers. You still have
That's
to
right.
feed it and keep it current.
Yeah, and that's why it takes 4 or 5 minutes a week, depending on how complex your numbers are. It doesn't take that long at all. It's really simple. The
And
hardest
what-
thing is just setting it up.
What will I learn from Mint.com once
Well,
I've done all this?
one, you actually know what's coming in and what's going out.
Okay.
So you know the numbers. There's places there you can see the totals. You see what you're spending in every category. You can start to create budgets, or I like to refer to them as spending plans. I hate the word budget.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't believe you should live off rice and beans. I don't believe you should be just cheap. I know you get it.
An allusion to our good friend Dave Ramsey. Now, some of you, especially if you're going through a divorce, probably have started listening to Dave Ramsey or gone to his website, and he will advocate making those kinds of sacrifices. Hey, don't just cut down your food budget
Right.
to and eating rice and beans and slowly saving that money up and using that to pay off debts. And you're saying,
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Now you do need to be responsible. I think everybody should be a steward of their money and be as responsible as they can, right?
Right.
But I don't believe that you should cut out everything that's good in your life.
And why is that?
And granted, neither does Dave Ramsey.
Right.
But how most people interpret his stuff, they will interpret it that way. They'll
Suff-
say, well, I gotta
suffer for the sake of getting out of debt.
Suffer for the sake of someday in the future that I might be able to come back. The problem is that it creates a habit of suffering. It creates a habit of just always sacrificing but never enjoying. And I don't want that to be the case.
And for those of you that don't believe that, just ask yourself, how many times have you been at work, got everything done, and could not stop working?
Good point.
I do. I get in that situation where I've gotten everything finished. There's nothing more for me to do, and I feel guilty, so I'm always working. Now, maybe that will pay dividends, and maybe I'll say, great, I'm using my time efficiently. I'm not talking about that, but it's funny you should mention that, because just this week I realized I have a hard time. I get in a habit, just like people might say, well, I'm in the habit of suffering so that I can save and scrimp and be frugal.
Right.
But it stops serving them after a while.
It does.
They become a slave to just their hardships that they've imposed on themselves.
Yeah. Like I heard somebody call on this show that said, hey, my car, it cost me $5,000 in repairs last year. It's probably going to cost me another $5,000. It's only worth $4,000. Shouldn't I just go and finance a new car? And Dave's answer to that was, no, absolutely not. You duct tape that bumper. You'll be amazed how long that car can last. And the guy was thinking, well, couldn't I just make the same payment I'm making and make that into a payment into a new car
Instead
with a
of paying for
warranty
repayment, repairs.
Yeah, and paying for repairs,
Right.
and that's the point, is that at some point you've got to use some wisdom and judgment, right? At some point you've got to at least enjoy life. You've got to be able to get out. I mean, it's so important. I've watched that happen with so many people in my life where they have gone through divorce. Even myself, like I still needed to enjoy some time out and be able to be me, and feel like I can do it. Now I didn't party every night, granted, right? But still, it's good to do that. And even during my hardest times with my wife and I, we were in the hole 16,000 a month. We would still occasionally do something, maybe the small little things. It wouldn't have to be expensive, but little things, even to have time with each other and develop that. And I recommend the same thing with your families or your kids, or if you're dating again, things like that. Is you really should enjoy life a little bit, and and so just being cheap is not the answer. But I do believe that there's a lot of ways that you can free up money, and that's why I had to get creative. I had to, things like cable. I got rid of all my DirecTV type stuff. Got rid of that. I got like what's called a Roku box. Some people have Apple TV, but I bought the box for like $60. I basically have a membership, a subscription through Netflix and Hulu Plus. Gets me all the current shows I want for $17 a month. And so all I have is standalone internet. I pay like $50 a month for 40 megabits of internet speed download, right? And all that kind of stuff. I mean,
and leverage is something you talk a lot about. So that's just one example. You've leveraged your TV viewing
exactly
to the maximum you could.
Some people might not want it at all. That's great too.
That's $17 freed up to do something else or to save. Okay, that's pretty cool. What else do you recommend for people to do?
If you're contributing to 401k plans or work plans, you might consider stopping that right now. In the meantime, to getting back on your feet. Ways to free up cash there. Because a lot of people will say, "I have no money." But then I look at it, and my average client, especially those that are entrepreneurs, free up $33,000 in the first year alone, right? And so we'll see things like 401ks are contributing to it, but it's not doing any good right now.
For people that are, it may be obvious to some, but why? What's the wisdom at this point in not funding the 401k or retirement? Why do that?
Yeah, if you've noticed that you have too much month at the end of your money, like there's not enough paycheck to go around.
That wasn't a mistake. Did you hear what he said? Too much month at the end of your money.
It's a great country song, right? If you ever notice that, like if you're running up a credit card so you can pay for your 401k, that's not a good thing. Your 401k makes no cash flow for you today. And who's to say it's even going to be there tomorrow? And so I'd rather have you gamble with that money in your own life and your own control than throwing away into some 401k that may never work out and you may never see for decades. So why not use that now? Maybe you can use that to help pay down extra on some credit cards. And I like to, when people pay down their loans, I like to pay down the loan that has the highest payment with the lowest balance. Sometimes it's credit cards, sometimes it's not. Look at the cash flow, look at the payment versus the balance. Which one would you pay off or pay down that would free up the most cash every month? And so when you start looking at that, and stop paying extra to loans. If you don't have the money to pay extra loans, don't pay extra to a car loan to then run up a credit card on the side, right?
Can Mint help people see that?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're spending more than you're making, well then you're obviously in that problem. If you're here where there's more income than what you're spending, yeah, maybe it's still okay to pay extra on some loans or pay extra in a retirement plan or whatever. But yeah, that's where you want to open up that freedom.
Okay.
And sometimes I don't like to go right to here. I still like to keep that buffer there because there's peace of mind right here. If you could imagine, any of you that are watching this right now, if you could imagine what it's like to all of a sudden have a loss of income by about $1,000 to $2,000 a month. Now going through a divorce, you might have felt that big time, right? It creates a lot of scarcity, a lot of panic and fear and stress. Now reverse that. What if that income was back? What if you had an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or more a month coming in? Would that feel a lot better? It would feel so good not to have to rely on alimony or child support, which could very well be the case. And the reality is a lot of people don't always pay that. There are a lot of people that don't pay that, and you can either whine about it, and you have every reason to whine, or you can say, well, how can I turn this around and make this different? How can I just take this massive amount of lemons and find some sugar and make some freaking lemonade, right? And it's not easy. It really isn't. And especially when you're in such a hard emotional state, and I understand what that feels like, still, be able to feel like you're able to be productive even when it's hard. It's amazing how much power comes from that, personal power, and how much you really start to get freedom. That stress really diminishes when you feel like you're in control.
What are some other things people can do right now? Like you mentioned Mint, you mentioned once you've done that you can start leveraging some things. You can substitute cable for Roku. You can pay down. What was it? The highest payment on the lowest balance loan.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you would recommend for people that are in a cash crunch during or immediately after divorce?
A great thing to look at too, and this is something you might need the help of an accountant, but find if you're actually paying in a way that's going to give you a tax return every year. I personally, now if you're a horrible spender, maybe a tax return and keep it away from you for a year isn't a bad idea. What I've noticed though is those spenders, even if they wait a year, will still spend it. So whether you get it today or in a year, it's going to be the same. And so one thing you can do potentially is you can look at the exemptions that you claim at work. So if you're working right now and you claim 2, 3, 4 exemptions, or whatever it might be, you might say, well, if I'm normally getting a $3,000 tax return every year,
Tax refund.
or sorry, tax
Yeah.
tax refund, tax return, well, yeah, tax refund, right? If you're getting a refund of $3,000 a year, that means on average you're overpaying $250 a month. Well, could we increase those exemptions on our forms with the human resources or wherever you work with that does payroll? Increase those exemptions to where you're getting that $250 back a month right in your paychecks right now. Because I
When
can
it's doing
bet
you the most
when it's
good.
doing you the most good, because that it might be the very thing to get you back on your feet. So I see a lot of people that say I have no money, and then they get like a $10,000 tax return. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, well, you're overpaying $800 a month. Let's get that money back, and then we'll find out they can't even get that much money back because maybe they have certain write-offs, or
Yeah.
some of them might have a side business, so they got a lot of extra write-offs and things like that. Lots of things you could do that way that you can free up that cash and have it in your control right now. Can help pay down some credit cards, get you back on your feet, get some reserves built up, and having a little bit in savings makes a big difference when you're starting over again.
Where do you see the biggest leaks in people's spending plans? What we had formerly called budgets.
Yeah. Oh, it's everywhere. It really depends on the person. Common ones, though, I mentioned some of the things like TV, internet, things like that. People get bundled packages and they're not always using them. Cell phones sometimes cell phone plans you get a cheaper deal, especially lately. Also food. Food's a big one. One of my clients, I've had a few like this, but this one was the worst. One of my clients was making $250,000 a year in California and could not figure out why they were just paycheck to paycheck. When we finally got her to do the numbers, and it took a month and a half to get those numbers from her, right? Because she was too busy to do it. 5 minutes is a lot, And so we finally got the numbers. We found out she was spending, eating out alone, $5,600 a month eating out.
I hope she was eating well.
She was eating very well. I even joked with her. I kind of laughed and said, "Wow, that's awesome. Are you eating lobster for breakfast?" And she had that nervous chuckle. She said, "Well, not too far off the truth, actually." And I said, let's figure out how to. I'm like, I don't mind you going out to eat at all, but let's cut this down to only $1,000 a month. 1,000, that's it. Some people are like, man, I would love to have a food budget overall with groceries and eating out of $1,000 a month. So I said, let's just, let's not have you jump from the hot tub to the cold pool quite yet. Let's just try this out. She did it, freed up like an extra $5,000 a month right there. Between that and a few other things with groceries, she freed up some money too. And then we saved money on health insurance and taxes. And next thing you know, she's saving 70, 80 grand that year.
So is insurance a place to look then as well?
Insurance is another place to look too. Unfortunately, if you talk to most insurance people, or if you go to like Progressive or whatever, they really discourage protecting you. You would never think an insurance company would not want you to pay more money. They really want you to be cheap. And so be careful when you do that. So if you're going to do things with insurances, I think you should have high catastrophic coverage.
Okay.
So if you have health insurance, maybe getting a higher deductible, so you pay for the deductible, but you make sure that it still covers things above. Things like auto insurance, homeowner insurance or renter's insurance. Make sure you have high liability protection, but you raise those deductibles up. And it might require you to have some more money in savings, which is fine. But what I've noticed is that when you raise up those deductibles, it saves sometimes the most money out of all those plans.
Anything else that people should be looking at when they're just trying to get their monthly expenses covered?
Well,
Trying to do more with less.
I would say this is that, there's a lot of other ways to save money too, but I feel impressed to kind of say, find ways to earn more money.
Okay.
Really look at ways to earn more and not just get an extra job. Don't just go and deliver pizzas like some experts recommend, right?
Okay.
But find ways to understand this one principle that makes all the difference when it comes to making money. And it's that dollars follow value. The more value you offer to people, the more value you create for people, the more service you give to people, the more ways you can solve problems, the more valuable it is to those people, the more they're willing to pay. So don't ask yourself, how can I make more money? Ask yourself, how can I be more valuable to more people? And to give an example, I had one of my friends, Brian, he was working with me as a client, and he was saying, okay, we're stuck, we've got things in collections right now, they're a young couple with young kids, they weren't sure how to dig out of that hole. And I said, all right, well, you're making, $15 an hour. Let's see if we can make some more money. And so I said, if I were to go back and work for an employer again, because I haven't worked for a job for quite a while, right? I said, if I were to go back to an employer, instead of being entitled like I used to feel, I used to be the guy that said, I deserve a raise, so I wanted somebody to pay me more.
Mm-hmm.
I said, go back and actually ask your manager or whoever, the owner, the supervisor, the manager, whoever's over you, ask them, what can I do that would merit me a raise? What can I do that would merit me a raise right now? And just find out what they say. And so he did, and his boss gave him like 3 things that he wanted him to do. So he did them. And 2 months later, the boss gave him a raise and said, all right, we're giving you a raise, but don't expect any more. Well,
okay, but that's
unrealistic.
That's
right?
nice, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
That story has a happy ending.
His boss
Right there.
his boss likes to be cheap, yeah. But pretty soon a position opens up to become an assistant film editor. Would pay him $20 an hour. So he ended up applying for that job, and because they said, hey, you've been great, you've been working great, we love you, let's have you go there. So he went from a marketing position to a filming position.
He couldn't get any more raises, so he just went to a
He went to a
job.
new position, right? Same company, but different position. Well, then an entire 10 months, he didn't get any raises. But after those 10 months was his annual review. And in that annual review, his boss said, hey, you've been awesome for us, and we'd like to give you a raise. We're going to make it $1.15. And my friend Brian said, no, absolutely not. That's not enough. I've done this, and I've done this. And he just goes through. He's like, all the ways he went and added extra value. Things that he just said, I'm doing this because I'm really putting this extra deposits in this account to really become invaluable to this company.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did. He said, and the boss said, okay, fine. What do you want? He says, I want $5 more an hour, not $1.15. His boss sat and thought for a minute. He said, all right, I'll give you that $5, and I'll throw the $1.15 on top of it, because I really can't afford to lose you. And so he did, $26.15 an hour. Next thing you know, they gave him another raise a few months later, and then there's a raise to include sick time and vacation time, and next thing you know, he's making almost $29 an hour. He went from $15 to almost $29 an hour, almost double his income in about 18 months. And it was all because he just focused on adding value. And what's really hard is that when you go through a divorce, and I did this too, you get really bitter sometimes, and you can get really entitled and feel that the world owes you a favor, that because you're a single mom or single dad or whatever, like, I deserve a favor, I need a break. The thing is, like, no, that will actually probably produce the opposite results. People probably don't want to help you when you do that. Instead, show up as like, you know what? I've got a bad deck of cards. At least I'm not dying from cancer right now or something like that. I'm alive. I'm healthy. I'm well. I'm just dealing with a crappy divorce. I'm moving on. And when you do that and you have this can-do attitude, people want to give you more money.
That's right.
And it's amazing how that works. And it works in business. It works if you're an employee. It works everywhere across the board.
And you make a good point. What would you rather do? Would you rather just fret over the amount of money you're being paid? Or would you rather screw up your courage and go into your boss and say, I want to make more money here.
Yeah.
What can I do for you so that you'll feel happy to part with that extra money
Right.
for me, as opposed to just worrying and getting a new job delivering pizza?
Right.
Wouldn't you rather stay at the same job and working the same hours, or at least maybe coming in a little earlier, leaving a little later, than having to bounce around between jobs?
In fact, yeah, right after my divorce, not only did I realize I had to use my overdraft for the first time, because I didn't even know what that was. I was freaking out, thought that I'd get in trouble, and realized it's just a line of credit, because I had like one credit card I never used, right? So I learned what it was like to go into debt during my divorce. I got a $500 speeding ticket. So everything was coming on me all at once. And I remember I went to my employer, I actually did ask him, I said, listen, I'm in a position where I do need to get either a part-time job, or can I work just an hour a day? Can I work just 1 hour overtime a day? That would actually get me breaking even. Again, I had to know where my numbers were. I had to know how much I needed to have come in to be able to make it, to be able to tell them that. I said, can I work an extra hour or 2 hours a night? And that's it, and just for a limited amount of time.
Yeah, and your boss knew you were motivated.
They did.
That helped. You knowing what you needed
Mm-hmm.
helped them say, yeah, okay, you're a good employee, and if all you need is another hour or so, I know that you're going to earn it because you need the money, and sure,
Right.
I'll throw that your way because I'm going to get more value as a result.
And I told him too, I said, if not, that's okay. I can go find another job, but I'd much rather just stay here and help you guys. Again, adding value. I didn't understand that at the time.
Yeah.
I learned that later on. But that was a big deal, and it helped me a ton during those times.
That reminds me, I had a situation where it was just, I backed into that. where my first job was a lawyer. I wasn't making enough money to support my family, which blew me away. I thought,
You
I
thought
just
attorneys,
graduated from
yeah.
law school.
Right.
That's when I was supposed to start hitting Easy Street. So I went and I got I didn't get one extra job. I had like
Yeah.
2 or 3 on top of my full-time job.
Wow.
And it came to my employer's attention. And it was one of those things he said, I can't have you moonlighting anymore.
Mhm.
And what I had to say was, give me a reason not to.
Right.
And so it's just kind of, you know, so I backed into it. But the point is, if you can go to somebody and say, I want to deliver that value,
Yeah.
then they're going to give you the chance if you can find a way. You don't have to ask. You may ask and they may say, I can't think of anything. So you might have to
Yeah.
think of ways to do it.
And that's right.
That's great.
So you sometimes have to get a little bit creative, but heck, if you've already gone through a divorce and know what you've gone through right now,
Mhm.
you probably are a pretty creative, proactive person. You know, I mean, regardless of the circumstances, you've had to overcome a lot of stuff. You know, using that energy instead to the negative, using that towards the positive to get yourself in a better place, and even a better place you were when you were married, I think is huge. And so when the time comes, or if the time comes, if you want to, you decide to get remarried, you're not doing that out of necessity because you've got to marry somebody. You're hoping to do it for money. And trust me, I've seen examples of family members who've done that where they've been married, 4, 5, 6 times because they keep marrying to have somebody help support them. When you know you can stand on your own 2 feet and say, I'm okay, I don't need that, but it would be awesome to have 2 parents in the home if you want to have 2 parents or not. I think having choice, that's the real key here. And this is why I talk about cash flow. Because when you have more cash flow, when you have more options, right? And when there's more options, that's where there's real freedom. Freedom doesn't come from how much money is in the bank. It comes from what kind of options you think you have. So if you know you've got options, you say, I can do this, this, or this. I can choose. There's freedom and power there. If you feel like you're stuck in a rut and you're divorced and you're like, this is the path I have to do. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do that. That's when you're just a slave. You're not even living life. You just hate life.
Fix the mic there. Well, I appreciate that. And now, did I fly you out of California to come here? Are you some East Coast celebrity? Where are you located?
I did drive a half an hour. So yeah, I live just south of Salt Lake City.
So see, Chris is right here in Utah, and so if you found what you've heard from Chris very useful, I certainly did. Why don't you tell him again? Just give him your information. You've got a blog that's quite helpful. There's some
Yep.
things that are free to people, but tell them, just tell the people that have watched what they can do if they want to know more, please.
You bet. Yeah, so I mentioned before, my name's Chris Miles. Money Ripples is the company, so moneyripples.com is my website. One things you can look for, you have blogs on that site you can check out on moneyripples.com. Also, if you're one of those people who say, hey, I'm really busy, but I have a commute, I've got an iPhone, I can listen to stuff. I also have my own radio show. And so I have the Chris Miles Money Show you can download on iTunes. Great little, 25, 30-minute sound bites there that are just great information, great guests that have come on that cover all kinds of topics around money and business.
Yeah, really good guests.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.